while Misha can be anchoring in this bush, aggressive in this bush, defensive in this bush, or on the point capping.
Does tilt at its core?
5v4, what if I just flanked and hit a God Mosh?
So I go body check, I go Indomitable, which is my unstoppable, I go into the fray, which is my save for allied heroes, I go...
Hello, and welcome to the second segment of our 6th CCS Masterclass. Again, I'm your host, Salvaje, and today we have a very special guest with us today. They are an IO psychologist who has worked as an esports psychologist for the last year and a half, one of the largest educational content creators for Heroes of the Storm. And they have coached hundreds of teams and thousands of players. And I'm sure many of you have heard of him. We are introducing NotParadox. Welcome to the CCS Masterclass, and how's it going?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. It's going pretty good. Overall, it's been a pretty fun Saturday. So, how's it going for you guys? I saw the last one was pretty interesting. I got to see Phoenix Rising and all that. Hopefully, everyone got to check that out because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, the Phoenix Rising guys are a lot of fun, and there's a lot of personality there. But for this segment, we're here to talk about you. So before we get into our topic, just let us know a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with HOTS, and just give us a little insight on who NotParadox is.
Sure. Yeah. So I kind of started, so I'm NotParadox, if you guys don't know. I kind of started playing HOTS back around like Alpha. I played on and off. It was a game that I really enjoyed, and I've actually tried to make content for most of the games that I've played, but generally on different channels. And this one was kind of one that I was really interested about because Heroes of the Storm was really nuanced, and there was a lot of people that had their own take on the game, and I decided to kind of go a different direction and go more of the psychology route about why we're doing the things we're doing in game and how to kind of abuse that, since if you can predict why you do things, it's a lot easier to predict why other people do things, which could be good for your team because it's, instead of arguing with them, you kind of know where they're coming from. And instead of and same thing with the enemies. If you were going to do something, you can kind of imagine that and do it. So I kind of took that approach with it and started making YouTube content for it. And for the last 3 or 4 years, I've grown about 50,000 subscribers, a little over, and almost exclusively from Heroes of the Storm. I've done a couple videos here and there for some other games, but the vast majority, 98% of my videos are Heroes of the Storm. I started coaching, and I've coached several games, but I've certainly improved over time. And as of now, I've done probably over 1,000 paid coaching sessions and quite a few more unpaid. And same things with the teams. Probably over 100 teams that I've worked with between Heroes of the Storm and League of Legends. And for coaching, it's primarily Heroes of the Storm, couple League, and one Smash Bros player that was kind of random since I don't really play that much. And just some of the things that I've done, I track all of my coaching and everyone that I've coached. And I like to see where their ranks go. And on average, I've been able to move people up nearly 2 full tiers, meaning from like bronze to gold, gold to diamond, etc. And my paid coaching, it's kind of in the same thing. It's nearly every team that I've coached has hit playoffs. If I've coached them more than 1 week, then they've all hit playoffs in their respective divisions. I've had a team win NGS Storm division. I've had a team win NGS Heroic division. I've had 2 teams win NGS A, 3 teams win NGS B, 2 teams win NGS C. I've had 1 team win Heroes Lounge 1, 1 team for Heroes Lounge 2, Region Invitational team, 2018 HGC Europe Phase 1, and LCS Summer 2020 recently. Actually, I got to work with Team Liquid, so they got 3rd place. So overall, between the games, I have a lot of coaching experience and pretty good results, if I'd say myself. But yeah, so that's why I'm kind of talking about coaching today. It's a bit of a whole thing, but that's why I'm talking about coaching today.
For
Hopefully
sure.
that
And
helps.
no, yeah, you absolutely let us know. Gave us a little deep dive into who Paradox is. And just so all of y'all know, for the remainder of the segment, we will be referring to Not Paradox as Paradox. And going into all this, again, it's quite an impressive resume you have essentially for Heroes of the Storm. Today's topic is going to be how to improve as a coach in and out of the game, which is an interesting topic because a lot of the people focus on the players. We're always talking about how players can evolve, how players can improve, how players need to recognize their own strengths and weaknesses, but we never diligently analyze the coaches themselves and how the coaches can actually be improving the way that they speak and inform players on how to improve their play. So I'm gonna go ahead and give the floor to you. I know we have a bit of a presentation set up for us. So here's the floor.
Awesome. Yeah, we can definitely show that. Yeah, you brought up a really good point about how we focus so much on the players and their ability to play, but when we're looking at a coach, it's really hard to gauge how good a coach actually is. And it's also really hard to gauge how well you're doing as a coach. And so I kind of set this up just to talk a little bit about coaching. And so our goal, just so everyone kind of can stay on track, we're just gonna do a quick intro, which we've kind of already done, so we'll skip that. I want to talk about the rules that I have for coaches, the mistakes that they generally make, and then a little bit about moving forward. So the golden rule, in my opinion, listen and pay attention. Basically, and it says right there, like, how can you coach someone if they don't know what their goals are? If you don't know their timeline, their availability, to reach those goals, like, how can you learn as a coach if you don't pay attention to the results of that coaching, right? This then is kind of one of those things that I think it's easy to say and hard to do, but you need to always be paying attention to what's going on, not just in the game that you're playing, but also with everyone that you've previously coached. I can't tell you how many times I'll watch coaches, and a lot of this is going to sound pretty harsh to coaches in HOTS as well as coaches in League and some of the other games that I've watched, but I can't tell you how many times I'll go and I'll scroll through like League or Here's a Storm streams for people that are doing coaching, and they never check back on the players that they've been coaching. And I'll click on one of the players that they've coached previously, and I'll just look at their rank. And like, there's this one guy I was watching, and he had coached the same guy every single week on stream. And I looked at this guy's rank, and his rank didn't change throughout the entire time. And I'm like, at what point do you consider that a failure for yourself as a coach? And I'm not saying that that coach is a failure. I'm saying that that is considered a loss in my eyes. And in the game, we learn from our losses, but as coaches, it's hard to learn from your losses because you could just blame it on the player. And I think it's really easy to blame it on the player instead of improving as a coach. And so listen and pay attention, because that's the only way that you're going to improve. And the goals for one person probably aren't going to be the same for the goals of everyone else. I would say 70% of the people that I coach want to move up in rank. The other 30% have different goals that are pretty wide. Some want to get better at certain heroes. Some want to join a competitive team. Some people just want to be better than their friends. Some people just want to learn more about the game. Some people are just like, I just want to improve it engages. I don't care if my rank changes at all. I want to make sure that I'm engaging at the right time. So make sure that you're listening, because if you have the same strategy each time, it's going to really struggle. My next thing, be a human. I find myself telling this to professors and psychologists more than coaches, but especially so when you have a new coach or you have a new professor, they find, and anyone that's been in school probably knows this as well, the newer the professor, the more it seems like they're trying to prove themselves, and they're harsher, they're more difficult, they use bigger terms, they try to overwhelm you rather than actually just teach you. Gaming is the same way, and especially with coaching. Here's a Storm so nuanced. There's so many disagreements between two different talents and playstyles. I always like to bring up the example of like Russ and Russ DT and Leon Black. They both hit top grandmasters playing Garrosh. They played it in completely different ways, and you could argue to the ends of the earth on which one is correct, but they both saw results, right? And so be a human. understand that other ways are possible. Don't be weird. Like, don't be overly critical. Don't ever be absolute with your advice or feedback. What I mean by that is, don't say, well, this is the only talent you should take, every other talent's trash. It's like, well, one, that might not stay for a long time, and two, you never know if that talent is the enjoyment that they're experiencing. If you're overly harsh to teams or players that you're coaching, you might just push them out of the game that they're playing, and that's the whole purpose, is that you're trying to make these games, they're maybe not paying you, but they're hiring you or bringing you on as a coach to improve their ability to play the game that they enjoy. Don't ruin the enjoyment of that game. I remember when I first started, I was coaching some dorm teams, and this one dorm team, they saw incredible improvements. In fact, two of the members in their team went from bronze to diamond throughout the time that I was playing. Actually, sorry, bronze to masters from the time that I was coaching them. And the second dorm ended, everyone quit. Literally every single person quit. And I had to change my process because it was just too harsh. And so I realized that being a coach also includes making sure that you're improving the enjoyment of the game, not removing that enjoyment. And then finally, just because you know the answer doesn't mean you have to tell it. Nobody, if people aren't specifically asking you, it means they probably don't really need that answer or want that answer. Especially during game, nobody likes to be told what to do. And so, and they might not know who you are either. And so it's just be a human, be respectful of everyone, understand that if you, in order to be a good coach, people need to like being around you. And if they don't like being around you, then they're not going to respect it. They're not going to like it, and they're probably not going to listen. So be a human. So let's get into the mistakes. Mistake one: people are too focused on rank. I put the Bill Belichick paradox because it's a funny name that Valcomer came up with. But it is true. So Bill Belichick, chick at first, was considered kind of an anomaly in the football industry, or football field anyways. He barely played football. He didn't play competitive football. He didn't play high school football. He didn't play college football. He didn't play professional football. In fact, he's barely played football at all. Yet, in many metrics, he's considered one of the best coaches of all time in American football. So if he's considered one of the best coaches of all time in a game that he's never played, maybe playing the game isn't the metric we should be looking at. So many people get overly focused on rank as a coach and when looking for a coach. They'll find people that are GM or Masters or Diamond and be like, this person can coach our team. But what happens is that this player might have gotten there because their mechanics were good. Maybe their game sense is bad, but truly, maybe they're just a bad teacher. I've seen people coach, and there's a couple players. Again, I'm not naming any names. There's a player that I respect. He's got an amazing game sense. He's got amazing mechanics. He's grandmasters multiple times, but he's really bad at teaching like a teacher. Instead, he just explains everything. He just kind of sends out all the information out there. And so don't focus on rank so much. Focus on improving your ability to coach. And the same is true for anyone that's looking for a coach. Don't focus so heavily on the rank of the coach. Look at how they coach, look at their methods, and look at their results. And that's another reason why I recommend writing down all of your results, because then you can show that to people and say, hey, I did all of this for free and all of this success came from it. Now I'm doing paid. And you can kind of go from there. Now, not every coach needs to be paid to be respected. There are so many good coaches. You got to remember, Kala did so much coaching for free, and he was considered one of the best coaches in North America for Heroes of Storm. So for me, it's not really the rank that teaches me, or that I see if someone's a good coach. It's more of just their results and their methods. And do you mind if I answer the question now, or should we wait until the question time?
I do like to wait for the question
We'll
time, because I am writing down questions as I go. I do have questions for you.
We'll come back. We'll come back.
Perfect.
So I like to use this graph whenever I'm teaching anyone how to build a team of competitive players. And I remember I actually had an app. I used a D&D app to build a group of players in D&D. except for this was 5 players on a League of Legends team and 1 coach. And I said, distribute the stats where you think they would be most effective. And I had mechanics, I had game sense, I had strategy, I had shot calling. And so everyone distributed their points. Their shot caller had lower mechanics, but really high shot calling, really high game sense, because they needed to be able to act quickly, but also give the right decision. And so then their like carry, they went full mechanics, and they were like, well, we could tell our carry where to be and where to go. But we want to make sure that they land every shot and they're always where they need to be. And their coach was so funny, they put 0 on mechanics and they put everything in game sense. And I was like, that's a good example of what you want in a coach, is someone who is spending their time not trying to improve at the game itself, but more about improving at their ability to understand the game and their ability to teach and improve the players that they're in and improve the team that they're in. So that's why I like to bring that up. Mistake 2, teams and coaches that just don't run drills. Whenever a coach doesn't run drills, that's always kind of my first thought of, this coach hasn't tracked their stats. When I track my stats and I coach someone without, or coach a team without running drills, their results are never as good, almost every single time. And I've coached a lot of teams, so I've had this opportunity. With individual players, the drills are a little bit me showing them how to run these drills, since they're usually alone. But with teams, you want to make sure that you synergize your abilities together. So coaches that don't run drills, I mean, it's something that like you can't get away with outside of traditional sports, and even down to slow things. I can't tell you how many times I was watching this this video, and it was 2 of these grandmaster chess players, and they kept starting the board in a very specific state, and they went over and over and over and over and over. And they were like, well, the reason we're practicing this state is because it's one of the most difficult board states to deal with. And it's not that often that we get into that board state. So we could play 100 games and only get to practice this board state once. But if we run drills in it, in the same amount of time it would take to play a single game, we can practice this board state 100 times. And so we started in this board state so that we can practice this board state. Well, it's the same in Here's a Storm. In the highest levels of competitive, you'll see maybe 5 or 6 team fights. So if you're running scrims, the amount of practice you get from team fights, you can run a whole block of 3-hour block of scrims, and you'll practice maybe 15 team fights. Well, if you're trying to practice a combo or a synergy or a type of play style in that team fight, you can practice it hundreds of times in the time it would take you to play a single game. And so drills are very focused and extremely useful.
Can I ask you a question for drills in regards to that? If you want to take a drink of water, feel free.
Yeah.
And because you've been talking for a long time now. So in regards to drills, how do you run a team through drills? What is a drill for Here's the Storm? Considering that these games are so short, so minute, the team fights are a little bit scattered. They're not entirely the same every time. How do you run a drill for a team to learn from?
Yeah, so for teams, I usually focus on synergies and combos. You should be drafting with a purpose. You should be drafting to win. And so when you have your drafts and your plans that you want to do, what are they supposed to do in a team fight? How do you win with that draft, right? Do you have Leoric and Orphea, right? If you have Leoric and Orphea, you know you're going to be doing Entomb, you know you're going to be doing Eternal Feast.
Oh, wait, hold on. We got to name it the right name. We know what the name
Dirty
is.
Bathtub?
There it is.
Okay.
Yes, the dirty bathtub.
So if I was to ask you, well, you're coaching a team and you know that's the combo you're going to be going with, how would you practice it to make it to where it feels like a good scenario, or a good, it feels real, but that you can reset after every time that you do it? How would you do it?
You would try to do it at any moment you can. Whenever the cooldown comes up, you want to throw up the Entomb and try to throw down the Eternal Feast.
Yeah, so in the custom games, you can reset that cooldown. And you can revive everyone instantly, and you can teleport back. So then, now that you know that part, what else would you do? I mean, you might need to communicate it a little bit. So you need to practice the comms as well. You need to say, okay, well, the Leoric is going to call out who they're looking at before they even get there, so that the Orphe can get in range and can hold her abilities. So now you say, okay, so when the Leoric says, I'm looking at this target, everyone's going to hold their abilities, and they're going to wait a second. Then Leoric's going to say, nope, can't do it, because you can't just use this against target dummies. So on the opposing team, you're going to get one of the players who's not related to this combo, and you're going to have them have all their stats maxed out, because you can't just go in and fight. They're going to try to fight back. So you're going to have the opposing player knowing that they're doing 300% increased damage, and they can just pop someone instantly. And so you need to play careful, you need to look for mistakes, and you need to wait for the right opportunities. But you need to communicate it. So when I'm training them to do drills, it's all of that combined. Look for a mistake. I like to play ETC when I'm playing against a team, because if I slide, there goes my exit, right? There goes my escape. So everyone's going to engage if I slide. Now they need to figure out how to get me to slide. Maybe they bait, maybe they just poke me down so I can't sit around too long. There's a million reasons why I might slide, but they need to force it. Or maybe they catch me pushing a little too far. So we need to find a way to simulate a real environment and a real threat, but we need to just do it fast and repetitive. And that's why you have the Leoric call it out, entomb, throw everything out. If it works, cool, revive the ETC, teleport them back in, reset everyone's cooldowns, run the whole thing again. And you run it 30, 40 times. I can tell you can get to the point where nobody even needs to say anything. Everyone has it down to muscle memory at that point. And you switch and you do it with every combo. Okay, you've got the dirty bathtub down. Now we're going to go Variant Taunt with Tehran to follow up. Now we're going to try out Blessed Shield with Light Bomb. We're going to try out Falling Sword with Light Bomb. We're going to try out I don't know. You literally go through all of your drafts and all the combos that you like, and you run them all 100 times to where your team knows exactly what it looks like at every stage of the fight, and they've seen every single angle of it. Instead of practicing it again just in a few different scrims, you know every single angle of what it's going to look like and how it's going to approach. And that's what a drill is going to look like. That's what you want to be doing.
That's exactly what I was going to ask, that the majority of your drills takes place in customs.
Yes.
Whether it be custom cursed, custom however it is.
Yeah.
Customs
Volsky
where...
and cursed, you can reset cooldown. So I'm usually alternating between the two.
There you go. And that's how you get those to be reliable. Thank you so much for that insight, and I'll allow you to continue.
Oh yeah, of course. And the same thing's true with try mode for solo. I'll have like auto attackers practice like stutter stepping while dodging the rocks from the minions to the left, or the so I'll attack those and then attack the thing on the right. The golems are throwing rocks, you need stutter step. Don't lose any DPS and don't get hit by any rocks. If you can do that, you do it enough, you practice it enough, well guess what? You're gonna get used to, during team fights, dodging all the KT's skill shots, dodging all of the Gul'dan's skill shots at the same time as not losing any DPS. So the same thing's true with individual drills as well. Mistake number 3, they don't track correctly. And this is something that is my biggest pet peeve, I would say, of coaches, is that how do you know if you're actually improving people if you don't track? And I can't tell you how many coaches, even ones that are very praised in both League of Legends and in Heroes, that don't track properly. So I'm going to give you kind of a look. There's for this, this is kind of what it looks like for me. A green means a win in my eyes. This is specifically for ranking. Anyone whose goal is to rank up. This is what it looks like for my spreadsheet. So it has just a number, just so it's easy for me to reorganize. It has the names. It has what game I'm coaching them in. It has their initial rank, and you can see that it's a number and not like gold 3 or something. The reason why is it's easier to run statistics on numbers than it is. So down here it translates. It says heroes rank translates bronze 5 is a 1, silver 5 is a 6, gold 5 is 11. So of course the higher the number, the better. Then it goes into rank 2, rank 4, rank 8. And because, sorry, rank 2 week, 4 week, 8 week. So that I can watch how they've improved, or even sometimes maybe they've kind of regressed over time. And so then I can kind of figure out, well, what did I do differently? And that's where I have my coaching style that I used. So I structure out each of my coaching styles, so that I can know which ones are the best and which ones are improving players, which ones are not. And I also explain what features are unique to those styles, or if I made any adaptations to those styles, so that I could again track, hey, well, whenever I use drills and breakdowns, this happens instead of this. And then finally, I put down hours coached. Sometimes people just improve more when they have a little bit more time to get coached. And so this would be a great example of what I look for. I then also have means, so I can see, okay, well, rank initial means, rank 2 weeks, 4 week, 8 week, so that I can see, okay, well, overall in this particular case, they've moved up by about 4.5, a little less than 4.5 points, which by the way that I have it down, that's a little under a tier. So that would move you from like gold to maybe silver, or sorry, gold to maybe plat. So this is a little lower than what my averages have been, but this still gives you a really good idea. Now, I have these highlighted as green, yellow, and red. I consider green a win as a coach. I consider red a loss or a fail as a coach. Because if you don't have like a rank system in every aspect of your life, you don't know if you're improving or not. So I always like to define a rank system for me personally, and I think every coach should do this. But that's another mistake down the line. We'll get to it. Um, and so a yellow is something that's like it's kind of even. Let's say that you have like a win and a loss, and it evens out, right? You're not moving up in rank or anything. So for me, this is actually pretty good. Mostly green, not too many yellows, a couple reds. I would want to go and answer these, right? I would want to go see what happened in the red and never do that again. And so I might have notes in that, and I have more in-depth notes that I usually store for each coaching, and I might go through and I might say, well, what happened in this red session right here? What did I do differently? What happened in this red session? What did I do differently? And I don't think anyone will ever have a 100% win rate. So there's sometimes that it just doesn't work. In fact, I find it pretty common that people that are in gold 5 end up back in gold 5. I've had a lot of success coaching people in gold 5 and getting them all the way up to in bronze 5, end up back in bronze 5. I've had a lot of success with people in bronze getting up to even like high gold, like within a couple weeks after the coaching session, and then they'll just drop right back down again. And so it's tricky when watching those, but that's something that I'm working on. I'm going to adapt and see if there's a new technique that I can do. And that's something that I'm practicing over and over and over to see, okay, well, maybe this technique is going to make sure that that stays consistent afterwards. And I haven't found the right technique for that yet, but it is just common. It's not every time, but it is common. So tracking that, I have a scatter dot that I always make of it just to make sure that I can see where people are going. And then I also run two formulas usually. I run a correlation to make sure that there's a correlation between the hours that I'm coaching them and the improvements that they have. So what I'll do for that is if you see this plus right here, those are all the ranks they've moved up from their initial to this current rank, and the hours coached are over here. And I'll throw this into a correlation coefficient calculator, which basically runs kind of like a t-test. And I put it in X value. I do the pluses, and the Y value is hours coached. Down here, I get a number. In this case, it's 0.889. The closer to 1, the closer it is to a perfect correlation. The closer to 0, the closer it is to no correlation. So being 889 means that there is a huge correlation between the hours I coach people and the ranks that they improve. And so I always want to be tracking all of these things, because at a point, people stop improving with my coaching. That means that I need to let people know that, right? There's no point in them paying for coaching and then not improving. So after a certain amount of hours, if I find that starts teetering off, I'm going to stop. I'm just going to tell them, hey, you're at the limit of what I can do. You can seek out another coach if you'd like to. And so tracking is huge. So we'll get back to the presentation on that. This is another kind of big problem that coaches have. A lot of times, a lot of high rank players will immediately think that they can be a coach. You'll have a lot of grandmaster X Pro players that are like, hey, I have this great, like, all these accolades, I have all these rewards, I have all these trophies. I'm gonna coach now and I'm gonna charge a lot for it. And I've heard a lot of complaints where people are like, yeah, they were very educational, but like I haven't seen many results from it. But man, I was like overwhelmed by everything. Um, so many coaches teach like parents, not like teachers. Parents will teach their kids by just showing them or by just telling them, where teachers are trained to teach. They know teaching theory, they know strategies for teaching. I think one of the first things every coach should do is learn how to be a teacher. Go learn teaching strategies and go watch videos that you learn from and go, well, how did that teach me? And what did they do differently? They didn't just tell me, they showed me, right? Or they walked me through it, they held my hand through it as I did it, right? So learn teaching strategies, find a teaching strategy that works for you, and that should be the number one thing, the first thing you do as a coach. Mistake 5, don't work with experts, or doesn't work with experts. This is actually something that Covey brought up. And I thought that was really good. No one knows everything. And this is true for me as well. There are a lot of limitations to what I know in game, especially when it comes to specific roles. And even the same is true about psychology. I'm not a clinical psychologist, so when people bring up questions about mental health, I usually refer them to a clinical psychologist. Know your limitations and know where you can find experts that can answer the questions you need to answer. Generally, when someone asks me about a specific hero that I'm not that familiar with, I'll reach out to someone that I know that is very good on that hero. I've sent like Chen players over to like Gojira, to Valimar. I've sent Rexar players over to like Champ of Horde. And so the reason why is because those are heroes that I just don't play enough of to really help out. And so even if I don't play the game that much, I will gather the information, enough information for the common heroes, and for the uncommon heroes, I'll get enough people that I know to send people to. Mistake 6, not defining a defeat for yourself. And that's basically what I showed earlier. How can you rank up as a coach? How do you know if you're stagnating or if you're even ranking down? I've seen some coaches that I feel like they've actually gotten worse the longer that they've coached, because they're doing things that they get less pushback on rather than things that are increased success. Or they'll do things that are easier to do. I can see a lot of coaches that go back to replay coaching, which is one of the least effective things that I've found. Is just purely replay coaching. You watch replays, you call out everything that they did wrong, and guess what? They learned everything that they did wrong, but they never learned what to actually do, what is correct to do. And so, so you need to define a defeat in yourself. And this is not just exclusive to coaching. I did this as well as a caster. When I started shoutcasting, I realized I was just doing the same thing every time, but I didn't feel like I was improving as a shoutcaster. So I went and I watched shoutcasters for different games, people that were doing bigger games, traditional sports, and a wide range of other things. And I went, okay, what do they do that I like? What do they do that I don't like as a viewer? And how can I adjust that? And you set, again, you need to set what to defeat. What does it look like to defeat or to lose as a caster? Well, it's kind of hard to define, but if you can define it in everything that you do, it allows you kind of have a rank system for everything. And that really helps me understand when I'm improving and when I'm not improving. So as a coach, 100%, you need to define what a loss is for you when you're coaching someone that's ranking up. For me, it's someone that didn't rank up. It's not someone that ranked down. That's a real bad loss. It's someone who didn't rank up because you spent your time and effort. They spent their time listening to you, potentially money. If they didn't rank up, that is a defeat for you. That is a loss as a coach. If they ranked up a little bit, but not too much, was it worth the time and money or effort that they put into this? Probably still not. You want to really get people ranking up if that's their goal. And so coaches needed to define a defeat. Mistake
And
7.
You can
Oh,
take a
sure.
moment here to take,
Yeah.
a drink of water, whatever you need
Yeah.
to do, because you've been talking for a long while here. And I do want to relate back to your past topic in regards to the metrics of how you determine whether or not your coaching is having an effective take on the
Mhm.
players that you're coaching. When it does come to their ranking, so you stated if they rank up, that's a success. If they
Yes.
do not rank, that's not great. If they rank down, that's a complete loss. When is it the moment where you take it in as you're coaching as fault versus the player soaking in what it is you're coaching? Where is that metric? It's a very difficult metric to try to determine on when it is technically the coach's fault that the player did not increase or actually decrease in ranked.
Yeah. I mean, for me, again, if it's anything but success, it's a loss. Just
Hmm.
because if they haven't moved up, I still consider that a loss, even if they didn't move down. Just because, again, they put their trust in you, and you did nothing for them, and it's just as bad. I mean, it's not just as bad as if you made it worse, but it's bad. As far as the question of like, when do you consider it the player not learning? Well, if the player didn't learn, that's a failure for me as a teacher. If the player just didn't follow, and I've had that happen, um, it's usually someone that I don't want to go back and get coaching again. And that's part of the reason why I
Hmm.
do the hours as well. I had this one guy, this is back when HEC was a thing, and his goal was that he wanted to be a pro player. And and so my first thing to him was, well, you need to rank up very quickly, and you need to get mechanically impressive. And in order to do that, the fastest way to do that is one trick. And so I
Hmm.
said, you're going to need to play the same hero over and over and over until you have it perfect. And I mentioned a hero that was in the meta at the time. And I said, if you can be impressive on this hero, I think it was Hanzo. I said, not only are you going to rank up and get exactly where you need to be, but you're also going to be very impressive to everyone. I said, then you can expand your roster once you're in the highest rank. And and I kept looking back at his match history, and every time he was playing every hero under the roster, every single hero. And I'm like, you're not even listening. You and I would ask him, I'm like, you understand like why? And he goes, yeah, I just don't find that fun.
Hmm.
I said, well, you want to be pro in a game, not everything is going to be fun. Like, being professional means that it's a job, right?
Hmm.
And so there's parts of every job that you don't like. And so if you want to be professional in a game, you need to understand that there's going to be parts of that game you're not going to like. And there's going to be parts of staying professional that you're not going to like. And so that does happen, but I usually will just stop coaching people that aren't willing to listen, even if they are learning. Um, but ultimately, statistics. There are anomalies. There are people that just don't perform the same way as everyone else when you give them those numbers. That's just human beings. So overall, one loss here and there. I'm not expecting a 100% win rate. Um, I learn from the losses, and I can make adaptations, but if that happens only once, I'm not going to make an adaptation. If it happens multiple times, like I said, with the bronze 5 tends to go up very quickly after coaching and then just drop when I like really far out after coaching. That's something that's happened multiple times, and that's something that I'm going to look to improve. But overall, if it's a one-time thing that one person's just not listening and their rank isn't, either I'm going to stop coaching them, or it's just a one piece of a statistic that I'm not going to be too concerned about.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you so much. We can continue.
Yeah. So mistake 7, treating everyone the same. Again, different goals, different strategies. If someone's goal is to rank up, you saw the strategy in there was like there were only 2 different strategies for ranking up that I ever used. I have 5 or 6 different strategies I use for coaching individual players, and it all depends on what goals they have. But also different schedules. I've noticed that when I first started coaching, I was really harsh when people had really slow results. And then I started noticing that a little bit more about how often people actually play. When I coach someone who plays like 200 or 300 games a season, I can usually move them up to, I mean, that 2 divisions in, or that 2 tiers in like one division or one season. Um, where if I see that they only play like 70 games a season, because they work and everything. I'm like, okay, well, if they give me a goal of that they want to be diamond and they're in like silver, I'm gonna be like, that might be a possibility, but you don't even play enough games that a Smurf could make that happen. And so it's hard sometimes. You want to really understand more about the person that you're coaching than you would expect is relevant. I usually start off my coaching sessions with an introduction. They already know who I am, but I'll usually do a quick introduction about who I am. And I will be like, and what about you? Like, what takes up your time? And how many games do you play? And if you don't mind me asking, like, what do you do for a living? I like to understand who they are because it changes how I'm going to do the coaching strategy and what goals are realistic. And then I just want to include a couple things really quick. And sorry for the flashbang for everyone that's watching this at night. The standard 3, if you saw what that was when I was showing my my little Excel sheet, you can see that I coached in 2 styles: standard 3, consistency 3. And so the standard 3, just because I know a lot of people want to learn from, they might be here because they want to know the actual things I do as a coach, right? The standard 3, I always go goals, a standardized plan, drills, and replays. And this is for Heroes of Storm, but it works for most games. Goals, I want to find out what they're trying to improve on, and usually that's rank. And if it is ranked, then I move on to a standardized plan. What a standardized plan is I want to know, let's say their goal is to rank up. I want to reduce their roster size down to a few heroes. We want to learn, and I think I'd talk a little bit more on the next slide about this, but we lower the roster pool. One trick is best for ranking up, and we want to focus on learning rather than actual rank. We want to let our subconscious take over on a lot of things. What I mean by that is, if you're learning how to drive, when you first start learning, everything's overwhelming. You're paying attention to cars around you. You're paying attention to things in your car. You have to pay attention to 100 different things at once. But after you've been driving for like 3 months, you only pay attention to like one thing, and that's the radio, because it's the most important thing. No, you only really pay attention to like 1 or 2 things: where you're going, kind of maybe what lane you're going. Everything else is handled subconsciously. Same thing's true if you were young and you had to like walk to school. The first time you're walking, you're paying attention to every little thing. Halfway through the school season, like you're not paying attention. You're talking to your friends, whatever. Before you realize it, you're at home. Your subconscious is very powerful. A lot of people say, like to refer to it, I can't remember the name of this concept, but they say that it's like the iceberg concept. You know how like the tip of the iceberg is really small, but what's underneath the water is much bigger. And it's kind of the same thing with your conscious mind or your subconscious mind. What your subconscious can handle is so much greater than what your conscious mind can handle, that you want to try to throw as many things to your subconscious mind as possible. And that means you repeat it over and over and over until your subconscious handles it for you. It's the same thing as breathing. If I said right now, you are now breathing manually, everyone in chat's gonna be mad because now they're breathing manually and they have to think about their breathing. But after a while, your subconscious takes it over again, right? And I mean, think about it, like breathe in, breathe no. The Your subconscious is powerful, and the more you focus on one hero, half their abilities become subconscious. And it's the first thing, like let's say you're trying to learn Malfurion. I always tell people you need to play Malfurion enough to where you never think about your Q or your W ever. The only thing you're going to be thinking about as Malfurion is when do I ult, when do I cleanse, and when do I root. That's it. Everything else is subconscious. And so one tricking is really important to get there, but there's one level beyond that why I like people to one trick. When you have nothing left to learn on one hero, you start learning more about the map and what else you can do on the map, what else you can do about the strategy of the game outside of that hero. Where if you're always switching heroes, you're always relearning those heroes and you're never learning the rest of what you can do with that map. Some of the people that reached professional in League of Legends when it first came out, there were a whole bunch of new heroes out that nobody had ever seen before. And all these players wanted to go and be the best. Nearly every professional player in the first season of League of Legends were one tricks. And that's because they were able to learn everything there is about their hero. And where everyone else was learning new heroes, they only learned their hero and they learned all the strategies that you could do on the map. When's the best time to invade? When's the best time to go for objectives? When's the best time to, in Heroes of Storm case, when should you go to which camp? what are there any other tricks you can do with camps? Can you take a camp a little bit later than you normally do? Like you start coming up with the best extra methods. So you take your hero from what's 100% of, hey, 100% of everything that I need to know about this hero I know, and now you're jumping up your knowledge to 200%, except for that everything that overflows works on every hero. So you can one trick until you learn and improve all the way up to Grandmaster, and then you can expand your roster, and most of that spills over to the other heroes. So a lot of pro players can pick up new heroes much faster than other players because they already know everything else, all the other strategies in the game. So that's a standardized plan. Lower the roster pool, focus on one tricks, and move on. Then I do drills. This is still part of the standard 3. I always like to do drills. And the goal of the drills is to show people what they should do. And then the goal of the replays is to show them what they shouldn't do. So we go into the drills. I show them everything that they should do on this hero. I say, this is what your early game is going to look like. This is what your mid game is going to look like. This is what your late game. Now, here's how you practice those things. And then I say, this is how you wave clear efficiently. This is how you cam clear efficiently. This is the best combo for that hero. And we'll run drills on all of those things, or at least I'll show them the drills on all of those things. I usually don't have time to run them for the players since it's so in depth of what I want to do in one session. And then we go over replays on those heroes, and now I get to see all the mistakes that they're making. So now that I've showed them what they should do, now with the replays, I show them what they shouldn't do, and I remove all of the mistakes. So if you're trying to improve at coaching an individual player, this is what I found the most successful, the standard 3. Goals, standardized plan, drills, replays. That's actually 4 things, but the goals is on all of the plans, so I just put that in there. But technically there's 3. And that works in most games. Moving forward, making your changes as a coach. Step 1, start tracking. I'm actually going to change this. No, hold on. No. I'm going to add 1 step in there. Let's make like a step 0.5.
All right.
Step 0.5 is improve as a teacher. There's a lot of classes you can take out there on YouTube, anywhere, just to learn teaching strategies. Learn some teaching strategies. Then step 1, start tracking. Step 2, define your losses. If you don't lose, how are you ever going to know when you're not doing a good job as a coach? Step 3, look to others for areas that you're weak. Nobody is an expert on everything, and it's the same in any field. You could be have a PhD and still only be an expert in maybe a very small selection of that. Step 4, continual improvement. If you are always improving as a coach, you're always going to continue getting better, and you're going to get more opportunities to coach more people because you'll have better results. If, on the other hand, you stop improving, then you might start going back down. I think there was can't remember who it was, but they said that like every hobby is kind of like a hill, that if you're not actively pedaling up the hill, then you're probably sliding down the hill. And so you can never stagnate on a hill. And so every hobby, you're either going to improve or just get worse. And so that's a huge thing about that. So continual improvement. Now, the same is true in life. And I know gets super cliche and everything, but every strategy I taught today can be used for almost any hobby. On how you improve, you can define your losses so you make sure that you're continually improving. I told you guys how I use the same strategy to improve my casting. And it was a strategy that I used for public speaking as well. When I was first getting into public speaking, like, what's a loss in public speaking? Well, there are none. But if I do start losing, then I can start removing pieces that cause me to lose. So I did competitive public speaking so that I could actually really see when I'm winning and losing. As part of Toastmasters. And so learn more about those around you. You always want to look for other people who have those areas. Focus on always learning. Again, it's a hill. If you're not pedaling up, you're sliding down. So always be learning. Focus on fewer things to start. Same reasons. Get all of the things repetitive, get it to your subconscious, start learning everything else that there is to know about that. If you're in martial arts, there's a quote from Lee, what's his name? Not not Jet Li, Bruce Lee. There's a quote from Bruce Lee that says, "I don't fear the man that practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man that practiced one kick 10,000 times." Because he has that one kick so perfect, and that's all it takes is a single kick. So the same thing's true with everything. Focus on a smaller detail and slowly expand once you've perfected something. But yeah, you can use any of those strategies to coach yourself and to coach anything else. Now, again, make sure that it's all warranted advice. Don't just go out and start coaching your friends and family when they are not asking for it. But yeah, hopefully that fits within the time and everything, and we're all good. But
No, that
yeah,
definitely fits in time. I do have a quick question if you want to go ahead and take a moment
sure.
to hydrate. In regards to the statement you just said, where you fear the man who practices one kick 10,000 times versus the man who practices 10,000 kicks one time.
Mm-hmm.
When does someone determine their strategy is perfect? Is there such a thing as perfection? Or when does someone, from a coach's perspective, when does a player perfect their strategy and able to use that strategy to excel in their games?
I think it's a good question. I guess I'll break it down into two pieces.
Mm-hmm.
One, I don't know if a strategy ever becomes perfect. I mean, you can look at like Google's algorithm. They're the largest search engine ever, and it still changes basically every day. They're constantly working to improve it. Um, and Google's one of those companies that they could probably just stop doing anything, and they would still be good, and they would still be the dominant force for at least 100 years. But they're always improving, and they're improving faster than most other companies, and that's what keeps them at the top. I don't think there's a perfect strategy. I think you should always be looking at, I mean, if you're hitting 100% win rate and literally every person you talk to for more than 2 hours, like instantly goes to like grandmasters. I mean, there's probably fewer improvements that you can make. There's this idea called the 80-20 rule. It's also called the Pareto principle, but it's basically that you can make 80% of the improvements with 20% of the effort, and the
Mm-hmm.
last 20% of the improvements are going to take 80% of the effort. What that basically means is that when you're first working on your method, you can make a lot of changes very quickly to improve that method. But when you're finally finishing your method, it's going to take a lot more effort to really get those tiny changes that make even a slight difference. So I don't think there's ever like a perfect method, but you can have a really good method pretty quick. And that's the second part of your question. I don't know if you remember at this point. Can you repeat the second part of the question?
So the second part of the question is when does a coach determine when that method has been perfected and that the player is improving besides just rank increase? Like, when can a coach say, you know what, you got it down, you're good to go, and then move forward with that?
Oh yeah, I mean, I gauge it by goals. I whatever goal they ask for, my goal is to reach their goal. So if they tell me, hey, I'm just like, I had some guy recently actually. He was silver and his goal was platinum,
Mm-hmm.
and he wanted to play tank. I taught him some tricks on a Nubarak. He messaged me about 2 months later, and he was platinum. And and he was like, "This is great. I want to do another session." And I go, "Well, why? You've hit your goal." He goes, "Well, I've got a new goal," and it kind of moved from there. Um, if their goal is to get on a competitive team, my goal is to get them on a competitive team. And when they get on a competitive team, unless they have a new goal, that's what I'm working towards. So I think a coach should always gauge how far they're going by the goals. I think we have a little bit easier than like, I don't know if you guys follow any like artists or anything, but you always like they get their work going and you're like, oh yeah, I would end here. And then they just keep going and they add like a couple more details and you're like, oh, that's perfect. I would end here. And then they add a couple more details. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
when do they know when to stop? Because for me, it feels like I would have stopped a long time ago. Well, coaches, you just stop when they hit the goal. And if they continue to want coaching, you just say, we need to update that goal because I don't want to just coach you randomly. I want to make sure that we're accomplishing what you're trying to accomplish.
That's fantastic. And I think that's a really good advice for a lot of the coaches out there. And we will go ahead and continue with your presentation.
I am done. So it's all questions at this point.
Oh,
So
yes.
yeah.
Awesome. So we have some Twitch questions that have come through the chat. The first one coming from Chazzy B. Do you feel as though you improve at playing the game when you coach a person/a team?
Yeah, I think so. I think you get a different look at the game, and you get a different look at the information in that game. I think there's a concept in educational theory that teachers learn their subject better when they're finally teaching it, not before they teach it. Because when you're teaching it, you get to look at each concept differently because you have to imagine how you're going to teach that concept. So you might learn it a little bit more detailed than the way that you're actually going to teach it. I had to go through one day and figure out like how much experience the minions gave at every point of the game, but I had to explain it in a way that isn't just pure numbers to someone where it's like, oh, well, they have 34 experience at level 1. I had to explain it a little differently. So I compared a hero kill to to experience, and then I gauged throughout the game. So now I teach people where this took me hours to learn all of this, and I teach people at level 1 it is faster. Sorry, at level 1, a minion wave of soak is worth 2 kills. At level 7, it's worth about 1 kill, and at level 13, it's worth about half a kill. And so it gives people an idea, okay, so I focus heavily on soak in the early game. Even if a couple members of my team die, I come out ahead, as long as I'm getting soaked and the opposing team isn't. And so you have to learn things almost in a bigger sense to then teach them. And so I think, yes, you do improve from a game sense perspective, but mechanically, you might actually like get worse just because you're spending so much more time on learning and teaching that you get worse. Mechanically, I know I've gotten worse. My first like climb to grandmasters, like I was playing so much better, but I was a much worse coach. Now I'm a much better coach, and I probably would struggle to get back to grandmasters. I could do it, but it would take me a lot of time to really get down, and I'd probably have to do a lot of those same things. I'd have to lower my roster pool down and kind of go from there. So I would say in ways you improve as a player and in ways you get worse.
Absolutely. And there's extreme valuability to being able to determine and crunch those numbers to say, hey, by the way, this one minion wave is worth 2 kills, like you just said,
Mm-hmm.
level 1. And regardless of that, that information alone is going to bring people a long way.
Yeah.
We do have another question from Weedar saying, how do you approach coaching players that have played a lot and have ingrained bad habits? So how do you get those bad habits out of them and improve them even further?
Yeah, I have actually a trick that this was always a difficult one, but I ended up finding a trick for this. And the initial thing that I used to do was, again, replay coaching. I can kind of call out a lot of mistakes, but sometimes it's hard to you get called out on a mistake and you end up still doing it just because it's such a habit. Um, Depending on what the ingrained bad habits are, and if you're willing to do it, I say take a break or roll swap. And
Hmm.
those are the easiest ways to do that. We can keep going back and looking at these bad habits, and there's like the cat spray bottle strat, which is basically like you do something that kind of hurts you in a way, and so that you don't do that thing. There was one coach that I worked with in league, and he would scream in the mic whenever you did that thing. And so the cat spray bottle method, right? So you can do that. My fast way of doing this, and it's almost worked every time. Someone that has a lot of bad habits in one role, if I role swap them to another role that they want to learn, they're starting fresh, yet they still have the game knowledge. So we can usually quickly get them up to speed, because they have ongoing coaching, and that tends to work out the best. But if you don't have that and you're willing to have a coach that sits there on your games, cat spray bottle. You basically just scream in the mic every time that they make that mistake or that bad habit.
That's very interesting. I don't know how I would react to someone screeching at me in the mic when I make a bad habit.
Right.
However, we do have 2 more questions for
Okay.
the end of this segment. One of them seems a little funny. So this one's from Slexia.
Okay.
If you needed a coach for any one hero, which one would it be, and who would you seek for coaching? However, you cannot mention Chen or Rexar.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. I'm not There's a lot of mechanical heroes that I'm not the best with. So I feel like I would probably want to get coaching on a hero that's like, because my mechanics are not perfect and I don't know if I want to spend the time like Samuro. I could use like Darren Ash as a coach, but or even like Funds. Both of those are phenomenal Samuro players, but like I feel like that's mainly mechanics and practice that I don't want to put the time into. Um there are a couple heroes that that just don't mesh well with me, and I'm trying to remember. Like Murden's probably one of them that I wouldn't mind
Hmm.
looking at. Just I find myself, I feel like I do well on him, but I just don't have like the numbers to back up what my feeling is. Um, put simply, I have a really bad win rate when I feel like I do better with him. I would say Murden, and as far as a coach, um, that's tricky because there's a lot of Murden players that I feel like I'm really critical about, especially in the competitive scene. Potentially Masquerade, just for he doesn't play a lot of Murden, but his Murden is very good when he does. I think that would probably be a good look at that. I don't really know his coaching style or anything, but as far as just knowing him as a player, I would say probably like Murden and Masquerade. I think Slexia wants the answer of Lunara and Slexia, but
Very true, very true. But we can consider Masquerade's coaching style as in a robe, and that's about as far as we can
in a
go.
robe, okay.
So we do have one last question. This is from Dice on Spear. Okay, so I have an actual legitimate question. What are, if any, the primary differences you see between League and Heroes players when you coach? Are there more notable differences, or are the biggest differences between low, mid, high, elo players?
That's actually a pretty good question. I think a lot of them are pretty similar. I think league players tend to have a little bit more of the mindset that they can carry, where Heroes of Storm players have a little bit less of the mindset that they can carry. When in
Mhm.
reality, the numbers for Smurfs like ranking up quickly, and the numbers for coach players moving up in rank are pretty similar. So there, as far as that goes, it's more of a mentality difference. Um, but no, I mean, I don't think that there's too many. I do think that it's easier to kind of guess the rank, I guess you could say, of a league player than a Heroes of Storm player, purely because I think there's just more players and their ranks are a little bit more difficult to rank up. So if you're in the rank, you probably really are in that rank in league. Where in HOTS, it's not uncommon to see someone who is mechanically at like a diamond or masters level sitting around like silver, purely because they're not really making the right decisions at the right time, or they're kind of like in a weird spot. So I would say there's a lot more of a blend in skill levels and heroes throughout the
Hmm.
ranks. So the point that it would be really hard to guess if you only saw like a replay and you had to guess someone that was like average skilled in heroes, they could be anywhere from silver all the way up to diamond. Purely because some games just look like a silver game even in diamond. And so it's trickier. But in league, it's a lot easier to guess what rank someone is, just because um again, the ranks take a lot longer to rank up and there's just more players, so it's a little bit more spread out. But and I would say that's probably the two biggest differences, is that their mentalities are a little bit different, and it's a little bit easier to pick out what's causing them to be in that rank. Um, Heroes has kind of like this thing where if you coach someone on just like double soaking, like the basics of macro, you can usually safely get them to like gold. And the same's true with League. Like if you just teach someone how to CS at about a 90%, which basically means you get the last hit on minions 90% of the time, um, you basically just instantly get them to gold. And so
Hmm.
both games, there's kind of like cheats to get people up to at least specific ranks. But no, I mean, there's a lot more similarities to heroes and league players than there are differences, in my opinion.
That's really extremely interesting for you to say, especially when you talk about this type of subject with Heroes players.
Mhm.
There's a lot of realities where I see trying to introduce a silver player to a master player where they would have none of it.
Mhm.
Silver player is completely different versus what you're saying right now versus mechanics and what they could be doing through the map.
Yeah.
But that's a whole conversation in itself that we can
Mhm.
save for another day. At this point, we are going to wrap things up. We got all the questions through Twitch chat, and we really appreciate your time, Paradox, for coming in onto the CCS Masterclass. So before we end things out, let us know, where can we find you, some shout outs if you want to give them, and where people can discover who you are.
Yeah. So again, guys, I'm NotParadox. I have a website, notparadox.com. Most people know me from the YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/NotParadox. Everything else I have like different names on. I have like Not Paradox Official and like Not_Paradox. So from those two, you can usually find everything else. If you want to follow me on Twitter or hop in the Discord or anything, you can usually find all of that on my website. But yeah, as far as shout outs, I mean, Slexia, thanks for hanging out and supporting. I see you in there. And as well, I mean, basically everyone in chat. It's interesting because I recognize nearly everyone that's commenting in chat, and they're often, many of these people are wonderful in this community. They've been supporting in different events. Mudar is in like GTS and Luminaires and a lot of different groups. It's like everyone here, and thank you to CCS for inviting me. I know there's been a couple invites sent a couple different ways, and my schedule's been weird, and there's been days that got booked up really fast for CCS. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to be on here. So, thank you, and thank you Salvaje as well for taking the time to being the host here. And you had to stop your Saturday stream a little early. No, you were doing GGS today, which, what happened to social Saturdays? Or is that Sundays?
No, it's Sasha Saturday. Yes, we usually do it every Saturday, but tonight we are running a little bit late. Your girl is running on 16 hours of life right now, so she's a little tired. But regardless of that, we really appreciate your time. I understand that the CCS Masterclass, this is a new and upcoming production, and we're trying our best to refine it. We're doing our best to keep in communication. There's a lot of hands in this basket. We have a lot of different kinds of people making this show to be what it is, and so far it has been such a satisfying segment of my life, essentially. So we really appreciate that you have come onto the CCS to provide your knowledge, and it's been a blast. This has been a blast, and I hope you had a great time coming onto the CCS show master class.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm glad. And I just hope it wasn't too much like death by PowerPoint, like where you just get too many PowerPoints and you're like, alrighty, let's get a video or something. Hopefully it was entertaining for everyone. And yeah, thank you guys so much for having me.
Nah, don't you even worry about it. So with that, we are going to close off the show. Again, my name is Salvaje. You can find me at twitch.tv/Salvaje Gaming. Tonight, we will not be having our Salva Social Saturday. I am exhausted, and I hope you guys can understand. But other than that, you can find Paradox at the links that he sent to you into the Twitch chat and in the CCS Discord. And we will see you guys next month for the next CCS Masterclass. And we appreciate all of you guys joining us. And we'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. Have a great night, guys. Bye.